I grew up going to museums. I lived in a city full of them, both big and small. I learned a lot and have many pleasant memories from them over the years, and this is something I've carried into adulthood. I remember visiting the British Museum with a good friend, pretending we were shopping, picking out chairs and amphorae, deciding what we would decorate our house with. This and a couple of other things have led me to think recently about how and why I visit museums, and why this might be different for other people.
When I was a kid, it was very much the play element and the experimental and interactiveness of it.
I've gone to a few more so art galleries, Tate Modern. I generally see them as not that interesting.
Lots of historical museums, and I was already interested in history, so I was just there kind of for the vibes and for the fun facts. And then now as an adult, I don't know. I think museums are fine, but I don't go there for ownership. I don't think that matters as much as other elements.
One of my most beloved museums is the Pitt Rivers, which gives very, very, very little description to any individual item, and it is, it is stuffed to the brim.
Lots of people visit museums for lots of reasons. Over the past decades, museums have undergone a shift, trying to better accommodate that. They've gone from primarily archival spaces, rows and rows of objects that are left to speak for themselves, toward places more of community and education. Engaging people is crucial, and after discussing with staff from the Wellcome Collection, I learned that this is something museums are trying to improve, especially with target groups. Outreach and dialogue are key tools for this. This is often facilitated through things like workshops, interviews, and surveys, though these methods often lack systematic ways to evaluate their effectiveness. This is what I aim to address by introducing Jacquard similarity. Jacquard similarity measures how similar two sets are by comparing their intersection to their union. It's calculated as the size of the intersection divided by the size of the union, giving a value between 0, completely different, and 1, identical. I chose Jacquard similarity because its set-based logic makes it highly adaptable across museum features, making it applicable to things like both floor plans and texts, though my pilot will focus only on text. My method involves applying Jacquard similarity on the materials produced in collaborative workshops, comparing them to the existing museum materials, in this case, text. The intent here is that this can be used to assess whether or not existing museum choices meet a target group's needs, though this relies on the assumption that people will create things that meet their expectations. The idea that highly similar choices need no or few changes, while dissimilar choices can integrate features from materials produced in collaborative design workshops. For this pilot, workshops recruited participants aged 18 and over and were resident in the UK. This method is intended to be used with target groups, so any findings should be considered with appropriate caution. Workshops consisted of 5 stages, the first of which was introductions, where participants were asked to introduce themselves one at a time, stating their name, and asked to share a memorable museum experience. This served the purpose of being a report builder. Second was a creative writing exercise, where participants were asked to write a short poem or piece of free writing about either one of their own museum experiences or one of the experiences they'd heard in the previous stage. This was to understand why participants visited museums and assist in identifying what features to integrate in the event of consistently low similarity scores. This also was warm-up for the next stage. Stage 3 was plaque writing, where participants were given information sheets containing images and information on objects from the Wellcome Collection, then asked to write what they would expect to accompany the objects. Participants were told that these texts could be in caption, interpretive text, both, or neither. This was to understand participant expectations and data collection for the quantitative comparison later on. Next was grading, so participants swapped their museum text and were then shown the existing Wellcome Collection text for each object. Participants were then asked to rate both the peer text and the Wellcome text on a scale of 1 to 5 for the following criteria: appropriate length, appropriate tone, appropriate level of accessibility, memorability, and appropriate conveyance of knowledge. This assesses participant opinions on existing texts and peer texts, and also collects data for further quantitative comparison later on. Finally, stage 5, open discussion. Participants were asked for feedback on the workshop and thoughts on the method, as well as given time to freely discuss, and this served the purpose of a debrief, as well as giving feedback on the method.
The exercise of having us actually write the curatorial labels is good at having us think of our own biases and what does go on there. And
I found this much more difficult than I was anticipating, which I'm very happy about. I think that really, I'd thought about the difficulty in curation, in selecting what's going in the space in the first place.
I think also remembering that while in real museums curatorial, these sorts of labels often appear neutral in its fact, but there is in fact somebody writing them behind that, and maybe they are working with a word count. Maybe they couldn't include a particular fact.
I'm just very excited to see what differences could occur.
In addition to these points, participants welcomed the addition of quantitatively measuring similarity for means of evaluation. Following on, workshop-produced materials were then digitized and destroyed. Python was used for analysis, specifically the NLTK library. Participant-created texts were compared using Jacquard similarity against welcome texts, resulting in a score, and this score was then plotted against the participant-assigned grades for each text. No correlations were observed, and this did not change when splitting the graph by object written about, although generally welcome texts were rated as less memorable and having less appropriate levels of accessibility than participant-created ones. And in other areas, participant-created texts were rated generally similar to or worse than existing welcome text. So how can we use this? Well, following on from this, welcome texts were then revised using features from participant-created texts that scored better than welcome text in target areas, so tone, memorability, that were also highly dissimilar, resulting in texts that might better meet workshop participants' expectations. To be noted, though, is this doesn't complete the dialogical loop. If this method is practiced again, it's recommended to integrate a further stage of feedback is given from participants or a similar group once these revised texts have been produced. It's hoped that the application of Jacquard similarity here in conjunction with existing approaches can provide a useful tool for museum curators and exhibition designers to evaluate their work against a target group's expectations.
I think next time I go to a museum, I'm going to be paying a little more attention about what actually is written on there, or maybe what wasn't written on there, and if there's anything particular, I'll be less afraid to just like Google it, I guess, rather than just take what's written there for granted.
For more information in detail, please see the paper that accompanies this video essay.